No one wants to talk about this, but today we're going there. Bloating straight up sucks, especially when it's around that time of the month. But what if there was a way that you could prevent it completely? And you're probably like, okay, sure, this girl is probably selling some sort of supplement, or she does not have her feet on the ground, because bloating is just part of being a woman. Because your whole life you've been led to believe that bloating is just part of getting your period, right? So the truth is, no, it is not, or at least it shouldn't be. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Eleni. I'm a nutritional therapist, and I help women like you eliminate bloat, craving, food sensitivities, PMS, balance their hormones, and fix their metabolisms and heal their guts without giving up all the foods that they love. If you get bloated every month before your period or while you're on your period and you're looking for ways to make the bloat go away, you are in the right place. I'm gonna give you some practical tips that you can use to help prevent or get rid of period bloating. I can honestly say that almost every single woman I've ever worked with has dealt with bloating on her period. Bloating is probably the top concern that I hear from women. They're just always bloated and always wondering what caused it or what triggered it. Why am I bloated every day, all day, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed? I'm just constantly bloated, especially around my period. And before we get into these home remedies for PMS and period bloat, make sure that you subscribe with the notification bell and leave a comment down below with any questions that come up for you. I used to struggle with really bad water retention and bloating before my period every single month. It was so bad that I would have to switch to wearing pajamas or sweats every month because my stomach would look pregnant. So that was awful. That was not fun. But on top of that, on top of the actual bloat that I would feel in my stomach, I would just retain water everywhere. So my face, my arms, my legs, I would be retaining water, and I would gain so much weight before my period. I hated it. And I barely even had 2 weeks of the month where I felt normal, because there was the week before my period, and as my hormones started to get more out of balance, that actually started to extend more to 2 weeks before my period. But anyway, the week before my period, I would be bloated, I would be retaining water, I'd start breaking out, I would be moody, I'd be tired. It was miserable. And then I actually had the week on my period, which was all of that, plus the cramps and the pain of actually being on my period. And not only that, but I would also have the period poops, which if you know, you know, that was awful. It was just a miserable experience for 2 weeks out of every single month. And like I said, that started to get longer and longer because my hormones were getting worse and worse. So that was actually 3 weeks out of every month at one point. I mean, when I say I was a mess, I was a complete mess. But why does this happen? Why do we even get bloated in the first place? Unlike men's hormones, women's hormones fluctuate throughout the month, pretty much on a week-to-week basis. Two of these hormones are estrogen and progesterone. Put simply, estrogen makes you retain water and progesterone acts like a diuretic, so it helps you shed water. We won't get into all the details of your cycle and its different phases, but for the sake of this conversation, I want you to imagine your entire cycle from the first day that you start bleeding up until the day right before you start bleeding again. I want you to imagine that cycle and cut it in half. So imagine you have a piece of paper, and that piece of paper represents your entire cycle. I want you to fold that paper in half. Now, right before that fold in the middle, you're going to, or you should, have a spike in estrogen. This is right around when you ovulate. And of course, this is different for every woman. Like I said, we're not going to get into all the details, but generally speaking, right about the middle of your cycle is when you're going to ovulate. And like I said, right before the middle is when you're going to have a spike in estrogen. And then hop on over to the second half of that piece of paper. You're going to have another estrogen spike about a week before your period. And this is why so many women feel bloated or like they're retaining water, either around the middle of their cycle or right before their period, or sometimes even both. Because remember, estrogen causes us to retain water. So when estrogen spikes, you can start to feel bloated and like you're retaining a lot of water. But here's where the real problem is. When your hormones are actually nice and balanced, bloating isn't an issue anymore. Water retention is not an issue anymore. Due to diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors, a lot of women experience something called estrogen dominance, which means that they either have too much estrogen in their bodies or they don't have enough progesterone to balance out that estrogen. And that's when you start to really feel uncomfortably bloated. Estrogen is not a bad thing, and those spikes in estrogen around ovulation and then again around before your period, those are supposed to happen. We don't want to stop those spikes from from happening. But when you have too much estrogen or you don't have enough progesterone to balance that estrogen, that's a problem and you're not gonna feel good. And you can also feel bloated because of sluggish digestion before your period. And this is pretty interesting. So your intestines actually have receptors for those hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So this means that those hormones, estrogen and progesterone, can latch onto receptors in your gut. When your hormones rise and fall, this can cause digestive issues and bloating because, again, your hormones and your gut are connected. So how can we actually prevent bloating during this time of the month? Tip number 1, the first thing that you can do is to actually hydrate properly. Now, hydrating properly is not just about drinking 8 glasses of water and chugging water all day long. There's a special bloat cocktail that I'm gonna share with you that my clients have absolutely loved to get rid of bloating and water retention. All you have to do is mix coconut water, a pinch of salt, and orange juice. This combination gives you some of the key ingredients that are needed to shed excess water and to keep digestion running smoothly. You're getting potassium from the coconut water, sodium from the salt, and vitamin C from the orange juice. And these 3 nutrients work together to reduce water retention and bloat. Tip number 2, so this kind of relates to the last tip, but tip number 2 is to increase your consumption of potassium-rich foods. Potassium helps you shed excess water weight, and potassium is a really important nutrient when it comes to hormone balance, digestion, gut health, and just overall well-being. It can be especially useful if you struggle with bloating and water retention. Some really great sources of potassium are coconut water, bananas, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, avocados, and watermelon. Tip number 3 is to reduce your consumption of highly processed foods and fast food. And I know this sounds really basic and really obvious, but fast food is just not helping the situation at all. Fast food is already gonna make you feel really bloated and sluggish and like you're retaining water. So you don't wanna add that on top of a phase of your cycle where you're already more likely to be feeling that way anyway. It's not helping. Tip number 4 is to eat magnesium-rich foods. Magnesium is another nutrient that your body needs in order to shed excess water weight, and it really helps with digestion as well. Magnesium is a mineral that your body needs in order for your body to digest your food properly. So not getting enough magnesium in your diet can really set you up for poor digestion and feeling really backed up and sluggish. Your body makes lots of different enzymes, which are little molecules that fuel every cellular reaction in your body. Everything from digestion to hair growth to nail health to skin health to muscle building to hormone production. You need enzymes to function, and you need magnesium for that. So without enough magnesium, you're gonna feel sluggish and bloated. Good sources of magnesium include molasses, dark chocolate, fruit, bone broth, and oil. Tip number 5 is to get moving. Exercise can really help with bloat and water retention. Now, you don't want to do too much and you don't want to do too little. If your workouts are too intense or you're doing your workouts too often and you're not letting your body recover, that can then increase inflammation in the body, which is not what you want. So during this time, you'll probably find that you feel best sticking to less intense workouts like taking walks, doing Pilates, even still weightlifting, but maybe just not as intensely. Maybe you're not going for a PR in the gym at this time. And that's not to say that you can't do more intense workouts like weightlifting when you're on your period or right before your period. I personally stick to weightlifting all throughout my cycle, no matter where I am in my cycle, and I feel great. But that's because my hormones are balanced. When my hormones were not balanced and I was struggling with a lot of bloating and water retention, I really didn't have the energy to do the more intense stuff like weightlifting. So I did stick to things like yoga, Pilates, walking, until I started working to balance my hormones and I gained the energy to do that, and it wouldn't cause me to feel run down and bloated. Tip number 6, and I know a lot of people don't like this one, but it is tip number 6, and that is to cut out or at least cut back on your alcohol consumption. Alcohol does have a negative effect on your gut microbiome, and that can really mess up your digestion. It can slow down your rate of digestion and make your food just sit in your stomach longer than it normally should, which is gonna make you feel really gross and sluggish and bloated. Just think of how bad and bloated you feel after a night of drinking, and then add period bloat on top of that. Like, that's not a good combo. That is never gonna make you feel better. Tip number 7 is to sip on fennel tea or simply just chew on some fennel seeds. Fennel seeds have a compound that relax your GI tract, and this can help relieve gas and bloating. This is obviously a quick fix and it doesn't address the root cause of your bloating, but it can be really helpful for in the moment when you're uncomfortable. Make sure you subscribe with the notification bell to get more new content that's coming every week. And if you like this video, you're really gonna like my free gut, hormone, and metabolism checklist, which I will put the link to in the description of this video. All right, you guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye.